Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and I think I got a watch bomb for you. The strikers in World Boss Ultimate and the co-op skill have both been changed. Now, before we start to hit the panic button, I have to remind you this video is being done via the APK, which is part of the Star Agent Netmarble program, and none of what you see is necessarily a guarantee in the final product. I'm not saying that everything you see won't be in the final product, but we just have to give that disclaimer for stats and effects and even things like this that appear to be different. However, the last time this sort of thing happened, where we realized a few updates ago with the Uncanny update that strikers were only doing one specific skill, that APK discovery turned out to be true, and for the last few months, since late November, we've been living in this post-striker world, for better and for worse. Now, I've gotten used to the striker changes. I'll just give you guys my stance on it. Although I was initially a hater of the striker changes as they were before, because I felt that it made the game too easy, referring mostly to things like perma mind controlling Ebony Maw and stuff like that. I got used to it because not only did it allow me, but more importantly other players, to push to a higher world boss stage, it also allowed weaker characters to push to higher stages. Now, the striker change was taken to its extremes with things like Luke Margui clearing stage 50 Ebony with Hulkling, and we realized eventually, it didn't take very long, I say eventually, but it's only been a couple of months, but we realized that for some characters they were being sort of carried by the strikers, and the strikers were doing all of the work. So a lot more language has been introduced to Marvel Future Fight to quantify, okay, I'm able to do this high of a stage in World Boss. You got to talk about your cards, you got to talk about your builds and your obelisks, CTPs, you got to talk about your raid level, but you also have to talk about your strikers, and you have to mention specifically what strikers you're using, because if you clear stage 90, well, you're probably using Weapon Hex, you're probably using Scarlet Witch, Invisible Woman, Thanos, Apocalypse. There's very specific small group of characters that are pretty much required for any high-level World Boss clear. So they've changed it now once again. Now, I don't know if this is going to be the final product, but I wanted to bring this to your attention. I wanted to give you a backstory on it as far as how I felt about it before and that I did change my mind. And now let's take a look at what the new striker changes look like. There's quite a few to go through. So we're going to start off with a very simple sort of show here, sort of description, demonstration. We've got Invisible Woman, Weapon Hex, and Scarlet Witch, just 3 strikers. And we're going to be using Superior Octopus, and you're going to be seeing what happens. So I'm just going to start off with the 3rd skill. And you see right away that Weapon Hex and Invisible Woman jumped in. Scarlet did not. And if you missed it, there is now a 10-second cooldown between striker abilities. That is a huge jump. That is more than 3 times as long as the current striker cooldown. The current cooldown on strikers is 3 seconds. So that is more than 3 times, by my math, more than 3 times as long. So there you see Scarlet comes in, and you see it's going to be 10 seconds before she comes back. In the meantime, Rachel and Invisible Woman have popped back up. But here's another thing that I noticed. So the first change that we noticed, that all the Star Agents noticed, is that the strikers take 10 seconds to come off cooldown. Okay, we'll talk about what this means in just a bit. But that's not all. If you notice as well, and again, it's hard to show you with just one test, so you sort of have to believe me. I've done multiple tests with different characters and different strikers. They're not all going to come out either, right? You see there now, the first time it was Invisible Woman and Weapon Hex. Now it's Weapon Hex and Scarlet. And you can see that Invisible Woman is just refusing to come out. So it seems as though there is built in as well a timer that doesn't allow more than a few strikers to activate at once. So it seems like if you have 5 strikers, maybe only 2 or 3 are going to pop out at the same time, but they won't all pop out. I tried it with 5 attacking strikers. I tried it with 5 when attacked strikers, and I just stood there and I got hit, and they never popped out more than 2 or 3 at a time. It seemed to favor groups of 2. So 2 would pop out, and then a couple seconds later, 2 would pop out, and then a couple seconds later, 1 would pop out. It seems like they're trying to stagger when the strikers activate to achieve a number of different things. So you're gonna, you might immediately panic, but there are some good things to this striker change. And I don't want to just give you the good things to try to make this seem like a good change. I just want to give you the good things up front, because I think the good things are harder to see in this situation. It's much easier to see oh my god, I'm only going to get weapons hex all defense down once every 10 seconds. This is garbage. The all defense down only lasts 5 seconds. I understand that. So it's easy to point out the negatives, and I will cover the negatives, but let's just cover the positives for a second. For one, players who have lower end devices won't get, you know, they might not get overheating issues. Again, I can't speak for every device, but I'm guessing, you know, when I had 5 strikers all activating at the same time, my phone would get super hot. Especially in long fights, my phone would heat up. When I didn't use strikers, you know, my phone didn't heat up. Weird thing. When I played other game modes, even with the same characters, my phone didn't heat up. But for World Boss, with 5 strikers doing all these animations at the same time, there was a lot of overheating. So this could, you know, basically get rid of the overheating problem. It could. I'm not saying it will. Secondly, this does also get rid of a lot of noise on screen. It doesn't reduce the noise completely. I still think they can do work to reduce the noise of the strikers, but it does remove some of that noise, that visual noise where you're like, I can't even see, where's the boss? Where did he go? They're hiding behind all these animations, you know. Now, you're losing the effects as well. Obviously, I'm not blind to that fact, but these are some of the things that are good about this change. Another thing I want to point out is the co-op skill. So normally that co-op skill, that purple co-op skill at the bottom, when you press it, it triggers all 5 of your strikers to jump into the battle and attack simultaneously, regardless of their cooldown. But the button cannot be pressed if one of your strikers is on the field doing an attack at the moment. So you can't interrupt a striker ability that's already in play. The button will just be unusable, and you'll have to wait for them to like despawn out of the zone. But let me show you what happens here. We're going to trigger a skill here to trigger some of their... So there we go. And then we pop it again. And you can see that some of them came back out, but they didn't necessarily all come back out. So the co-op skill does circumvent. The co-op skill appears to circumvent some of the cooldowns, but it does not necessarily bring all of the strikers back every single time. Now I want to give you a different example. Again, I want to show you multiple different tests so that you guys can try to understand this as best as possible. You're not going to have a full understanding of this right away, so you know, don't worry if there's still some holes in what I'm saying and whatever. Like, you know, it's going to be there's going to have to be more testing done, and there's going to be more information that has to come out. The patch notes, we'll take a look at what they say in the patch notes in a few days to see how detailed their description of this change is. You know, to the best of my knowledge, in the history of Marvel Future Fight, they're never very detailed with changes like this, with very technical changes like this, but we can hope for a more detailed response from the devs this time around. And we also have to see if this actually makes it to the final product. And I'll give you guys my opinion on whether I think this is good or not in a bit. But we're going to go through the rotation here with Crescent here, as we did in that other video. You can see most of the strikers have triggered, but their Scarlet Witch hadn't actually triggered for a while. They're going to pop in and out, but you can see that the timing becomes very staggered. You have 10, 2, 8, off cooldown. It's a very wide range of numbers here, but here's what you want to pay attention to. Okay, so we freeze frame it here. Invisible Woman 5 seconds. Scarlet Witch 8 seconds, Weapon Hex 3 seconds. We're going to press the co-op, and you can see, pause again, Invisible Woman came out again, even though she was on cooldown. Scarlet came out again, even though she was on cooldown. So did Silver Surfer and Thanos, but it appears that Weapon Hex did not come out again. It's kind of hard to tell. Actually, she did there just at the end, I think. I'm not sure. But from what I've seen, not all of the strikers get triggered every single time you do a skill. A co-op skill. So one more time, let me show you guys that not all of the characters pop out during a co-op skill activation. So there, we activated the co-op skill. I do see Invisible Woman. I do see Scarlet. I do see Thanos. I do see Silver Surfer. And actually, you know what? I think actually, yeah, I did see Weapon Hex there at the end. So we saw all 5 of them. So the co-op skill where all 5 characters jump in, that may be unchanged, but you can see that it doesn't affect the cooldown of the characters. So it seems to be sort of a compromise between the cooldown, the co-op skill offering you a way out, a way to sort of, you know, hit the reset button, not necessarily the reset button, but just to get back the strikers for a particular combo. It allows comboing, but it seems as though in regular play, it's going to be a lot harder to combo because not only do the strikers take 10 seconds in between activations, but they also don't appear to come out all together with every attack. You know, every time I make an attack with that 10-second cooldown finished, you're expecting to see Weapon Hex, Scarlet Witch, and Invisible Woman jump out simultaneously. Every time I get attacked, I'm expecting Thanos and Silver Surfer to pop out together, but that's not the case, and that's not what we've been seeing. I say the Star Agents, and you can feel free to watch their videos to cover the information as well. Now, there is one more piece of information going around, or one sort of theory going around, that in addition to these changes, it seems as though the world bosses are taking reduced duration from crowd control abilities. So what that means is, let's say you use Scarlet Witch as a striker, and this does happen with certain characters, like Cull Obsidian appears to do this into some form or another, but essentially instead of having that full 5 seconds, oh, it's on the 4th skill, sorry. It's instead of having that full 5 seconds of mind control every single time she strikes, even though it's 5 seconds of mind control every 10 seconds, it appears as though that 5 seconds of mind control starts to sort of whittle down and shrink. And as the fight progresses, as you get into the 2nd minute, the 3rd minute, the 4th minute of the fight, after Scarlet has been a striker and she's activated her ability 10, 20, 30 times, that this 5 seconds of mind control reduces to 4 seconds or 3 seconds. Again, I can't say whether that's true or not. I think that's a lot harder to test. It requires a really controlled environment that it's just really hard for the Star Agents to sort of emulate and copy. So I really encourage the devs on this one. If you could just let us know if that's the case, or if it's not the case, also let us know, because some people have reported that this appears to be the case, but others have not. I haven't been able to replicate that. I'm not saying that the other Star Agents are liars. I'm just saying that that one is really hard to test. You have to sit there and look and sit there with a stopwatch. Like, it's really hard to actually be playing and not dying and testing. And then you also have things like, the raid level, the level that you're on, the amount of damage that you're doing, yada yada yada. So there's like a lot of stuff that goes into it that does further complicate the results that you get, and sort of muddies the results that you get. And so that appears to be probably the biggest change that's going to affect the game moving forward, and is going to, I would say, on average, make World Boss harder for most players. Now, we did cover some of the positives of this, i.e. like overheating and lag, lower devices not being punished as much, and also visual noise for all players being reduced if the strikers are not going ham sandwich every 3 seconds and jumping in. Now, what are the negatives? Well, the negatives are that essentially all of the sort of high-level clears that we've been experiencing with characters that combo with strikers like Weapon Hex will probably no longer be possible. So stage 99 Captain America, well, I don't know if his new uniform is going to make it possible, but I don't think with his existing uniform you can do it anymore, because rather than Weapon Hex jumping in every 5 seconds to set that 100% all defense down, she's only doing it every 10 seconds. So that means half as often, which you could interpret as, it's actually less than half as often. So she pops in for the attack every about 4 seconds. So it's a little bit more than it's a little bit less than half the time, which you could say is like half the damage. Now, does that mean that you're going to drop from stage 99 to stage 50? No. The damage and the defense and the HP don't scale linearly. So you'll probably still be able to go into the 70s or the 80s, but you won't necessarily be able to go all the way up to 99. You might drop like 10 or 20 stages, which is a big deal for some players. I totally understand. I think it's going to have much less of an impact at lower stages, in my opinion, but it's hard to test because, generally speaking, if you have a player who is at lower stages, then they have worse cards, they have worse builds, they haven't been playing as long, their Valor's not as high, their raid level's not as high. So it's difficult to compare between that and between my account and this account, which is, of course, as you guys know, is completely different with the setup. Not only the raid level is completely different, but the cards are different as well. So it is hard to say exactly how much of an impact this is going to have, but it is going to have a negative impact on very high levels of World Boss Ultimate, and I think it's going to frustrate some players. Now, what do I think of this personally? I think that it's okay for them to experiment with changes like this, because it does give us something new to do. And as much as I disliked the striker change when they made it easier, it did give me a lot of new things to try. I tried Electro as a striker for Thor. I tried, of course, Weapon Hex as a striker for, like, dozens of characters. So it technically gave me a lot of new content, not just new content to put out in videos for you guys, but I actually would sit around sometimes when I wasn't playing Marvel Future Fight, and I would sort of think about striker combos and like, oh, who could I put with this character, and like, what sort of team up could we take advantage of? And we were even looking forward to characters because they had specific resistance downs, like, you know, Sunbird's fire resistance down, or Blue Dragon's lightning resistance down, and we were hoping that their striker skill would match up with that skill so that they could use it in World Boss. That hasn't changed necessarily, so there is still the value in tracking those things. It's just that it's not going to happen as often. So I do think that it's good that they're experimenting, because it does give the players something new to sort of theory craft and calculate. However, I do think 10 seconds is too long. In Marvel Future Fight, players learn to time their rhythm of their attacks on a 7 to 8 second window. 7 seconds being the internal cooldown on a damage proc, and then 8 seconds being about the time it takes between that proc finishing and you activating the next one, because it's not instantaneously, because it's a 10% chance to trigger, or in the case of a rage, it's a 20% chance when you crit. So you have to give that sort of 1 second window. That's why I say 7 to 8 seconds. So I think they should lower the striker cooldown to 7 or 8 seconds. That would make much more sense. It would be in perfect rhythm with each proc, and it won't necessarily make things as easy as they are now. You know, Scarlet Witch's 5 seconds of mind control would activate and last for 5 seconds, but she would come back after 7 seconds, so you still have a couple of seconds in between. But on top of that, it would not make players' lives a headache. I think having to remember your 7 second cooldown, having to keep your 8 second timing internally, and then also trying to match that up with a character who's striking for you on a 10 second window is too much. There's too many numbers, there's too much number juggling, and I don't think it really makes sense. I think it just serves to overly complicate the game in a way for existing players. New players obviously are not going to have a problem getting used to this system. They're going to think it's just fine and dandy. But players who have, you know, lived through these multiple World Boss striker changes will find some difficulty and some discomfort there. So I am thinking of them. I do think that 7 or 8 seconds is better. However, another thing that I do actually like about this striker change is the idea of cascading effects, and the idea of, or sort of like a domino effect of striker abilities, and also the idea that certain strikers are going to raise in value now. This impact, if it lasts to the update, to the final build of the update, is going to really impact certain characters. So obviously, like I said, Weapon Hex is probably going to lose value, but then other characters are actually going to gain value. For example, characters that don't rely on most strikers, Deadpool and Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange relies on Weapon Hex for higher stages of World Boss, but not for lower stages. So Doctor Strange is actually going to seem more powerful than most characters after this change, because he's more consistent. He's one of the most consistent characters with and without strikers. And then Deadpool doesn't require any all defense down with the Holiday uniform, which probably makes Holiday Deadpool, after this change, the undisputed heavyweight champion of World Boss. Yeah, it's probably a shoo-in and a lock for him to be, for her to be number one for World Boss. It's just insane, because the value won't actually drop. You will actually see a little bit of a drop in Deadpool's damage, because the strikers in general won't come out every 5 seconds, every 3 seconds, but it's not going to be nearly as drastic. It's not going to be like 10 or 15 levels. It's going to be like a few levels at most. But the good thing is that it does give other strikers a chance to shine. So for example, you have Scarlet Witch, who deals 5 seconds of mind control every 10 seconds. So you're like, man, what am I going to do? Well, what you can do now is you can try to pair strikers together with different timings, but the same effect. So for example, Apocalypse. Now people already use Apocalypse, but as I showed in the video, if they're on different timers, like for example, Invisible Woman and Scarlet didn't seem to want to strike at the same time. If Apocalypse and Scarlet get on different tracks and sort of proc on opposite timings, that could give you better coverage for mind control, because he also offers mind control on his striker ability. Similarly, you could combo someone like Apocalypse or someone like Scarlet Witch with a different type of striker entirely, like Ebony Maw. Ebony Maw provides 10 seconds of mind control when you get attacked. So now, because it's a 10-second cooldown, it's much more valuable to have when attacked strikers. Obviously, I know that when attack strikers don't work for every character. Some characters like Luna and stuff, they don't ever want to get hit because they're so fragile and they can die in one shot. But for characters that can sustain a hit, and when players get used to it and start to use immunity more carefully and invincibility more carefully and sort of strategically, this could open up new strategies and make valuable previously characters that weren't very valuable. Because up until now, we've basically said when attacking strikers are the best and when attack strikers are mostly useless. We say mostly useless because we just want to keep attacking, nonstop offense, go, 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 iframe, immunity, whatever, just smash the boss's face in. Don't even think about these strikers, for the most part, for most characters. Now, if this change goes into effect, it sort of shakes things up a bit. So I do see some positive value in that, but I do think that 10 seconds is way too long, and I think it should be reduced. I think 8 seconds, 7 seconds, 6 seconds is fine. 6 seconds is still double what the current cooldown is of 3 seconds, but I will wait to see what happens with the patch notes, what the devs say, and of course, as always, I want to know what you are thinking in the community. So hit me up with your comments. I've tried to be as balanced in my approach to this news and to delivering this as possible. I don't want to be overly positive. I don't want to be overly negative, but I do want to give you as much of the information as I have. So let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.